In his 2012 essay Terminator vs. Avatar, Mark Fisher strongly reaffirms the famous accelerationist position, which states that under neoliberal late capitalism, the future of left-wing politics is cancelled. Perhaps you're trying to go back to some kind of pre-capitalist primitive society. Sorry, that's cancelled. You're engaging in anti-capitalist class revolt, or perhaps you're just a SOCDEM making minor adjustments to capitalism. Sorry, even that is cancelled. The idea of cancelled future echoes the main theme of Fisher's book called Capitalist Realism, where he argued that there's now an overwhelming sense that capitalism is the only viable economic and political system, and that there cannot be any alternatives to it. Well, what makes Fisher say that? After the dissolution of the communist Eastern Bloc, capitalism emerged victorious from the historic battle of economic systems. This in turn brought about politics of capitalist consensus, or post-politics, or post-ideological politics, or politics after politics. Anyway, which is a situation where any real political change is a priori rendered impossible, because people are always expected to think and act within the confines of free market capitalist system. That said, capitalism also turned out to be unique in its ability to absorb and include in its own language all acts of political subversion, resistance, and even protest. Oh, hey there, you're protesting something? How about we rebrand your protest and sell a bunch of shoes? This is the reason why Fisher considers leftists to be out of touch with reality. He thinks that leftists overestimate their ability to imagine and fight for a real alternative to the capitalist consensus. Here we should consider James Cameron's movie Avatar, which perfectly encapsulates the failing imagination that is endemic to the culture of late capitalism. The movie tells us that we can indeed be in touch with Mother Nature. We can be our true selves. We can carelessly jump from tree to tree, and we can fall deeply, deeply in love. However, as Fisher writes, we can only play at being inner primitives by virtue of cinematic proto-VR technology, whose very existence presupposes the destruction of the organic idol of Pandora. In other words, this movie shows that the alternative to capitalist consensus, the primitive world of Pandora, can only be experienced through the imaginary of capitalism. So there's nothing to return to. There's no pre-capitalist authentic reality that could ever be accessible to us. We are forever stuck in capitalism with a human face. The question then is whether that illusion of a human face is necessary for capitalism to sustain itself. Does capitalism actually require the veneer of pre-capitalist authenticity and community to justify its own existence? Before Fisher answers this question, he discusses the work of a controversial accelerationist theorist, Nick Land, who is sometimes called the father of accelerationism. Land's analysis of the future of capitalism is quite dark, because he thinks that technological advancement will inevitably obliterate all democratic structures that keep capitalism under control, and it will soon bring neo-feudalism or hyper-corporatism, as seen in movies like Blade Runner. This is the reason why Fisher in this essay talks about the movie Terminator. The figure of Terminator is a perfect embodiment of Landian dystopian capitalism, in that Terminator represents an invasion from the future by a force of artificial intelligence. It symbolizes a dystopian capitalist force that cannot be bargained with. It is a force that doesn't show pity or remorse. Terminator, like Landian capitalism, consumes all natural and cultural resources. It is the destroyer of the human face. Well, Fisher thinks that Land's analysis of capitalism is fruitful because it challenges in a very creative way leftist political thinkers who write naive theories about anti-capitalist antagonism and then go out to a pub to discuss their radical politics with their bourgeois comrades. Land is, according to Fisher, an antagonist that the left needs. However, Fisher also thinks that Land goes too far. Land is unable to see that capitalism needs a human face to sustain the myth that another world, a more authentic world, is possible. Fisher writes, "Capital's human face is not something that it can eventually set aside, an optional component or sheath cocoon with which it can ultimately dispense. Fisher in this essay shows that the dystopian accelerationist vision of capitalism, as seen in Terminator, is now replaced by a vision of simulated escapism, as seen in Avatar. Both of these accelerationist visions challenge, in their own particular ways, the idea that an escape from capitalism is possible. They reinforce the idea that the future of left-wing politics is cancelled. However, only Avatar shows us honestly the main problem with late capitalism, namely that all protests, antagonisms, and alternative lifestyles are already included within the language of capitalism. That's what makes capitalism so unique. It runs on contradictions. It is the most productive and at the same time the most destructive moment in history. Indeed, we can be fully included within capitalism and at the same time we can feel as though we are totally excluded from it. Fisher, for this reason, says that all people are accelerationists, insofar as all of us, to some degree, seek to escape the defeatism of the cancelled future. We are all engaged in the creation of escapist narratives that actually only reinforce the cultural and economic contradictions that capitalism is built upon. In Fisher's opinion, we should move beyond the language of socialism good and capitalism bad. In fact, Fisher suggests that now would be a good time for us to reread the Communist Manifesto, which would force us to analyze contradictions embedded in capitalism more openly, and at the same time, it would call upon us to embrace and accelerate anti-identitarian futurism, or futurism that is beyond sad passions of good versus evil. So, if you want to be an honest Marxist today, you have to be an accelerationist, says Fisher. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.
You should subscribe to my channel. You should subscribe. Please don't forget to subscribe. Subscribe to my channel. Subscribe.